introduction to Macbeth. Some of the ideas and things we should be thinking about or looking for as we read, or things you need to know. So first, this Macbeth, that's a Scottish name. It's pronounced Mac, not Mick or Mick. Macbeth. Now, there's not many things in American English that sound like that. There's the Big Mac, mac and cheese, Mac trucks, but other than that, it's Mick, like Old McDonald, McDonald's restaurant. It's, in a way, for me at least, I have to be consciously saying Mac, like Macbeth, because that just doesn't appear as much in standard American English as Mick. Okay, let's continue. So, the name is Macbeth, the tragedy of Macbeth, but don't say the play's name. Why? There is a long-standing tradition, at least amongst actors, that they believe this play is cursed. So there's been a history of bad things happening when this play is put on. And a lot of actors will not say Macbeth in the theater or in reference to like the play. They'll say the Scottish play or some other things. So why? Well, Macbeth has some supernatural things in it. It has witches, and the witches have spells or incantations. So I've heard two theories, that the spells or incantations that the witches use are actual witches' spells and incantations, and that by the actors saying them out loud, they're invoking that dark magic. Or that witches were angry with the play and they cursed the play, so now the play is cursed. Believe whatever you want. Let's continue. So some stuff you should know. Macbeth takes place in Scotland, which is the country to the north of England. It's one of the three countries in Great Britain. It's a fairly cold and rainy kind of place. A.C. Bradley kind of coined this idea, that there are the big four Shakespeare tragedies, the great masterworks of Shakespeare. The four big great masterworks that are that are also tragedies. We have Othello, Macbeth, Hamlet, and King Lear. Generally, those bottom two, Hamlet and King Lear, are considered the greatest of Shakespeare's works. It used to be more Hamlet. It's been, over the last 100 years, kind of shifting to King Lear. Actors would get known for their Hamlets, also their Macbeths. Macbeth is the shortest of all of these, and it's probably the weirdest too. But it's one of the great four Shakespearean masterpieces. So let's talk about tragedy. It's a genre, it's a type of drama, so it's stage production, though other things now can be tragedies, in which the characters experience a reversal of fortune, usually for the worse, so things are good, and then they're not good. Catastrophe and suffering await many of the characters, especially the main one. So, a lot of the main characters in Shakespeare, and this isn't true of just Shakespeare, this is true of a lot of characters in fiction, but also people. A lot of people have tragic flaws, major or decisive weakness or limitation in someone, resulting in the fall of that person. It's the thing that causes your downfall. Ambition, greed, lust, forgetfulness, whatever. In Macbeth, we have this idea, in a lot of the Shakespearean tragedies, not all of them, but most of them, we have the idea of the tragic hero. He's a privileged, noble character of high birth, high repute, who, by virtue of a tragic flaw and fate and kind of their own actions, suffers a fall from glory into suffering, or from good into bad. There's that catastrophe. Tragic hero, let's do a quick checklist of the things that usually, but not always, usually form a tragic hero. Person of high stature, generally a good person, at least from the beginning. He matters to us. There's something about him that makes us want to follow this character. Because of his position in society, his actions kind of echo out into the universe. He has a trait that's normally considered a virtue, but in the circumstance of this play, is his flaw. Like Hamlet is an overthinker. It's good to overthink things to make sure you do the right thing, but in a time where you need to act quick, overthinking is actually really bad. He's a great man and shows promise of future greatness. He often has errors in judgment, which often lead to his downfall. In the end, he's responsible for his own downfall. And I keep saying he because most of the main characters in Shakespeare are male characters because most of the actors were male, and it's just a little bit more convincing. Some of the tragic heroes are not males in Shakespeare, but the vast majority of them are. Just think of the title characters, even though that's not always completely true. The tragic hero usually makes mistakes in judgment. He often has a distorted perception of reality. He commits further crimes or misdeeds which cause or continue his downfall. He suffers both outwardly and inwardly. He elicits fear from the audience, catharsis, or even an emotional reaction. The main character usually recognizes his mistakes, and in the end, the tragic hero dies. Because the tragic hero doesn't die, it's not a tragedy for that hero. So let's take this idea and just stretch it to the real world. Here's my personal definition of tragedy. Something that was beautiful and worthwhile is gone. It cannot be recovered, and the world is worse for the loss. So when you look at that definition, you can apply that to your own lives and the big world. I heard someone say, maybe it was Harold Bloom, Shakespeare is the saddest of all the tragedies. Because it's not because of how many people die in the end or whatever. It's because Macbeth is the story of a good man becoming a bad man. And nothing is sadder than that. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I know it's powerful. Okay, here's an idea that's very relevant to this play. Not on all the plays, definitely this one. Even though Shakespeare was in the Renaissance, he was kind of writing at the end of the medieval period, and all of the medieval ideas were still in their world. So Shakespeare believed, or his people, the world, believed in this thing called the Great Chain of Being. So a lot of times it was literally depicted as a chain that spanned the whole universe. But basically the idea is this. Everything in the universe, every link in the chain is ordered. There's a hierarchy of everything in the universe. At the top there's gods, and then there's the angels and all the varieties of angels, and the planets and all the planets and the celestial bodies like the stars and stuff. And then you have humans, and of humans there's a hierarchy. You have the kings and nobles and queens up, and then the lesser nobles, and then clergy members, and then it keeps going down all the way to bad criminal ruffian people. And then you have animals. The animals are ranked by which animals are most noble and which animals are most useful to people. But at the bottom of the animals is the snake. Why? Because the snake is Satan. Then it's plants and all the different kind of plants. The plants that help us and give us medicine and give us food are higher ranked than poisonous plants. And then minerals of the earth are ranked. Gold is worth more than rock. And then all the way at the bottom is not God. It's not Satan. It's chaos. Because God is order. The opposite of God, the opposite of order, is chaos. Shakespeare and Shakespeare's people believed in an ordered universe. Everything had its place in the hierarchy of kind of what was important. And if you visualize a chain, like rattling, the way to think about that visualization, and I will literally in my own class take a chain and do this. If one of the links in the chain gets disrupted, all of the links below it get thrown into chaos. The links above it don't, because they're above it. So, for example, if the link of the chain that is the king is murdered, everything below the king is thrown into chaos. But nothing above, because that's what's above the king. So that's something, when you read this play, you have to think about. He believed that, or the people of that time period, that the world was ordered and structured and made sense, and everything had kind of a hierarchy in the great scheme of the universe. Also, the idea of the divine right of kings, that the king or his ancestors were picked by God, and therefore the king doesn't need to answer to anyone except God, and what the king says or does is kind of what God wants him to say or do, so you shouldn't question the king. It's a really good political strategy. I'm the king and God wants me to be the king, so don't go against me. Alright, some big themes. Unchecked ambition and temptation. What happens when someone is ambitious? Someone is tempted by something, and they don't check that ambition or that temptation. They give into it and they pursue it. Deep analysis of human nature. This is one of the best works of literature that really looks at evil. Evil, violence, cruelty, and tyranny. What makes a person bad? What makes a person what's the difference between someone that does bad things and an evil person? And we get to explore that in this play. Order and disorder or chaos. We actually looked at that with the Great Chain of Being. They believed in an ordered world, and a disordered world is chaotic. It is the opposite of God and holiness and the natural order of the universe. So even nature is ordered, and so that ties into nature, where the opposite of what's natural is what's unnatural. It's what's often supernatural, and that breaks the normal logicalness of the world. Appearance and reality, self-deception. Things are not what they seem. Things are not what people think they are. People have bad judgments of the world or incorrect judgments of the world. Guilt and conscience, feeling guilt for the things we've done and unconscious, having guilty conscience. Masculinity and gender roles. What is masculinity and what is femininity? And are those things constructed by us, like social constructs? Are they in human nature? Is there no human nature? I don't know. And this is pretty much in every Shakespeare play, or many of the tragedies. Destiny or fate, stars, foreshadowing, stars and horoscopes, and action and choice, and all that kind of complicated stuff gets thrown into it. People today, if you know anyone that likes horoscopes, it's the same thing. Free will and chance. How much free will do you have, and how much does chance, as opposed to destiny or fate or whatever, play into it? Self-fulfilling prophecies. The things we believe will come true when we act upon them and we make them come true. Do they only come true because they were going to come true anyway, or do they come true because of our actions to make them come true? So if you think you're going to fail a math test, therefore you don't study, and then you fail the math test, well, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Or there's a character in Austin... no, never mind. Different idea. So motifs. Recurring ideas or elements. So these are not... They're not like as big or as deep as themes, but they're things that we keep seeing that do have significant meaning. So blood, there's a lot of talk of blood, a lot of blood visuals, and we'll see how these ideas get transformed. Threes, there's a lot of threes, things that happen in threes. 3 in at least medieval Christianity is a holy and magical number, like the Holy Trinity. So a lot of things that are magical or mystical or in this play happen in threes. Clothes. Using clothes metaphorically, literally, to represent and talk about things. Birds. So here's something that pretty much doesn't matter at all to us. All the references to birds and what do these birds mean, and comparing people to birds. Partially because it's just not in our culture anymore, and unless you're an avid bird watcher, you probably don't care about this. But this probably meant a lot to the people there that were way more in tune with nature than we are. So yeah, sleep, being awake and being asleep, and dreaming and daydreaming, and the difference between kind of night and day. Visions. Seeing things, it's a self-perception thing. What's real, what's not real, what do we choose to think is real. Light and darkness, good and evil, night and day. So I point out all those little things to just show you, hey, here are things upcoming. You've been awakened to them. So now when you see them happen, they'll be easier for you to point out as they happen. It's kind of like if I were to show you a football play in a computer and I played that 8-second clip and you looked at it, you're like, okay, what happened? Oh, I didn't tell you what to look for. I go, oh, okay, let's rewatch it, but look at number 42. Watch what he does for the whole video. And I play it and you're like, oh wow, that was amazing. Yeah, because I told you what to look for. So that's kind of the point of this. I'm telling you things that are of importance so that when you read, they stick out to you. And some big philosophical ideas, really two ones. Humanism. It's a philosophy, I've heard some people say that it's basically a religion, but let's just say it's a philosophy that gives, on Earth, greatest importance to humans, as opposed to divine or supernatural things. People's ability to reason and think, and their capacity for good and overcoming difficulties. So, we are the most important things on the Earth. Not a religion, not a god, not some sort of abstract force. It's us. This is based on rationality, critical thinking, and empiricism, gathering evidence, over faith and belief. So, Harold Bloom was, I heard him say this, I don't know if this is completely true, but the direction of it is kind of right. That he said that Shakespeare basically invented the human, or what it means to be human. So if you look at when Shakespeare wrote, it's before the Enlightenment, before like those really concrete ideas of individuality and the individual and kind of worlds without religion. But a lot of those ideas are already in Shakespeare, and they're there for individuals talking about themselves and their morals. Hamlet, I've heard someone say, is the first modern character. Like, we get Hamlet. So this might be true, but Shakespeare is maybe the first, European humanist in the last 500 years. Who knows? And then the last big idea is nihilism. The belief that life has no purpose, value, or meaning. So a lot of the humor, like right now, for young people right now, is deeply, deeply nihilistic. A lot of the memes and a lot of the jokes, it points out the absurdity of life and the absurdity of choice and the absurdity of action. That's nihilism. Life is so absurd, it must have no purpose, it must have no value, it must have no meaning. So that idea will be confronted in this play too. And that's about it. So enjoy your reading of the text.